Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below the video and the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today we will be learning about the ancient city of Ephesus. Ephesus may ultimately derive from Hittite and was a city in ancient Greece on the coast of Ionia, 1.9 miles southwest of present-day Selkirk, in Izmir, or Izmir as some pronounce it, Provence, Turkey. It was built in the 10th century BC on the site of the former Arzawan capital by Attic and Ionian Greek colonists. During the classical Greek era, it was one of 12 cities that were members of the Ionian League. The city came under the control of the Roman Republic in 129 BC. The city was famed in its day for the nearby Temple of Artemis, which has been chosen as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Its many historic buildings included the Library of Celsus and a theater capable of holding 24,000 spectators. Ephesus was also one of the 7 churches of Asia cited in the book of Revelation. The Gospel of John may have been written there, and it was the site of several 5th century Christian councils. The city was demolished by the Goths in 263. While it was afterwards rebuilt, its status as a marketable center weakened, as the harbor was slowly silted up by the Koukoumenderes River. In 614, it was partially destroyed by an earthquake. Today, the ruins of Ephesus are a favorite international and local tourist attraction. Perhaps partly because they are easy to access from Adnan Menderes Airport and from Kusadasi, a cruise ship port some 18.6 miles south of it. In 2015, the ruins were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Ephesus was an important center for early Christianity from the AD 50s. From AD 52 to 54, the Apostle Paul lived in Ephesus, working with the congregation and apparently organizing missionary activity into the hinterlands. Initially, according to the Acts of the Apostles, Paul attended the Jewish synagogue in Ephesus. But after 3 months, he became frustrated with the stubbornness of some of the Jews and moved his base to the school of Tyrannus. The Jameson Fawcett Brown Bible Commentary reminds readers that the unbelief of some implies that others, probably a large number, believed, and therefore there must have been a community of Jewish Christians in Ephesus. Paul introduced about 12 men to the baptism with the Holy Spirit, who had previously only experienced the baptism of John the Baptist. Later, a silversmith named Demetrius stirred up a mob against Paul, saying that he was endangering the livelihood of those making silver Artemis shrines. Demetrios, in connection with the Temple of Artemis, mentions some object, maybe a rock, fallen from Zeus. Between 53 and 57 AD, Paul wrote the letter 1 Corinthians from Ephesus, possibly from the Paul Tower near the harbor, where he was imprisoned for a short time. Later, Paul wrote the epistle to the Ephesians while he was in prison in Rome around 62 AD. Rome in Asia was associated with John, one of the chief apostles, and the Gospel of John might have been written in Ephesus, circa 90 to 100. Ephesus was one of the 7 cities addressed in the book of Revelation, indicating that the church at Ephesus was strong. According to Eusebius of Caesarea, St. Timothy was the first bishop of Ephesus. Polycratz of Ephesus was a bishop at the church of Ephesus in the 2nd century. He is best known for his letter addressed to the Pope Victor I, Bishop of Rome, defending the Quartodeciman position in the Easter controversy. In the early 2nd century, the Church of Ephesus was still important enough to be addressed by a letter written by Bishop Ignatius of Antioch to the Ephesians, which brings with Ignatius, who is also called Theophorus, to the church which is at Ephesus in Asia. Deservedly most happy, being blessed in the greatness and fullness of God the Father, and foreordained before the beginning of time, that it should be always for an enduring and unchangeable glory. Letter to the Ephesians. The church at Ephesus had given their support for Ignatius, who was taken to Rome for execution. A legend, which was first mentioned by Epiphanius of Salamis in the 4th century, purported that the Virgin Mary may have spent the last years of her life in Ephesus. The Ephesians derived the argument from John's presence in the city and Jesus' instructions to John to take care of his mother, Mary, after his death. Epiphanius, however, was keen to point out that while the Bible says John was leaving for Asia, it does not say specifically that Mary went with him. He later stated that he was buried in Jerusalem. Since the 19th century, the house of the Virgin Mary, about 4 miles from Selkirk, has been considered to have been the last home of Mary, Mother of Jesus in the Roman Catholic tradition, based on the visions of Augustinian sister, the Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, 1774 to 1824. It is a popular place of Catholic pilgrimage, which has been visited by 3 recent popes. The Church of Mary near the harbor of Ephesus was the setting for the 3rd Ecumenical Council in 431, which resulted in the condemnation of Nestorius. The 2nd Council of Ephesus was held in 449, but its controversial acts were never approved by the Catholics. It came to be called the Robber Council of Ephesus, or Robber Synod of Latrocinium, by its opponent. Ephesus is one of the major Roman archaeological sites in the eastern Mediterranean. The city ruins still give some idea of the city's original splendor, and the names associated with the ruins are evocative of its former life. The theater dominates the view down Harbor Street, which leads to the silted-up harbor. The Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of ancient world, once stood 418 feet by 239 feet, with over 100 marble pillars, each 56 feet high. The temple earned the city the title servant of the goddess. Pliny tells us that the magnificent structure took 120 years to build, but is now represented only by one inconspicuous column, revealed during an archaeological excavation by the British Museum in the 1870s. Some pieces of the frieze, which are inadequate to suggest the form of the original, and other small findings were removed. Some to London and some to Istanbul archaeology museums, the Library of Celsus, the facade of which has been carefully reconstructed from original pieces. It was originally built circa 125 in memory of Tiberius Julius Celsus Polymaeanus. He was an ancient Greek who served as governor of Roman Asia from 105 to 107 in the Roman Empire. Celsus paid for the construction of the library with his own personal wealth, and he is buried in a sarcophagus beneath it. The library was mostly built by his son Gaius Julius Aquila, and once held nearly 12,000 scrolls. Designed with an overstated entrance so as to enhance its perceived size. The building faces east so that the reading rooms can make best use of the morning light. The interior of the library measured roughly 2,000 square feet and may have contained as many as 12,000 scrolls. By the year 400 CE, the library was no longer in use after being damaged in 262 CE. The facade was reconstructed during 1970 to 1978, using fragments found on the site or copies of fragments that were previously removed to museums. At an estimated 25,000 seating capacity, the theater is believed to be the largest in the ancient world. This open-air theater was used initially for drama, but during later Roman times, gladiatorial combats were also held on this stage. The first archaeological evidence of a gladiator graveyard was found in May 2007. There were 2 agoras, one for commercial and one for state business. Ephesus also had several major bath complexes, built at various times while the city was under Roman rule. The city had one of the most advanced aqueduct systems in the ancient world, with at least 6 aqueducts of various sizes supplying different areas of the city. They fed a number of water mills, one of which has been identified as a sawmill for marble. The Odeon was a small roofed theater constructed by Publius Verdius Antoninus and his wife around 150 AD. It was a small salon for plays and concerts seating about 1,500 people. There were 22 stairs in the theater. The upper part of the theater was decorated with red granite pillars in the Corinthian style. The entrances were at both sides of the stage and reached by a few steps. The Temple of Hadrian dates from the 2nd century but underwent repairs in the 4th century and has been re-erected from the surviving architectural fragment. The reliefs in the upper sections are casts, the originals now being exhibited in the Ephesus Archaeological Museum. A number of figures are depicted in the reliefs, including the Emperor Theodosius I, with his wife and eldest son. The temple was depicted on the reverse of the Turkish 20 million lira banknote of 2001 to 2005 and of the 20 new lira banknote of 2005 to 2009. The Temple of Sebastoy, sometimes called the Temple of Domitian, dedicated to the Flavian dynasty, was one of the largest temples in the city. It was erected on a pseudo-dipteral plan with 8 by 13 columns. The temple and its statue are some of the few remains connected with Domitian. The tomb fountain of Pollio was erected in 97 AD in honor of C. Sextilius Pollio, who constructed the Marnus Aqueduct by Ophilius Proclus. It has a bowl-shaped facade. A part of the site, Basilica of St. John, was built in the 6th century, under Emperor Justinian I, over the supposed site of the Apostles' tomb. It is now surrounded by Selkirk. Ephesus is believed to be the city of the 7 sleepers. The story of the 7 sleepers who are considered saints by Catholics and Orthodox Christians, and whose story is also mentioned in the Koran. It tells that they were persecuted because of their monotheistic belief in God, and that they slept in a cave near Ephesus for 3 centuries. The history of the archaeological research in Ephesus stretches back to 1863, when British architect John Turtle Wood, sponsored by the British Museum, began to search for the Artemisian. In 1869, he discovered the pavement of the temple. Since further expected discoveries were not made, the excavation stopped in 1874. In 1895, German archaeologist Otto Bendorf, financed by a 10,000 guilder donation made by Austrian Karl Mottner Ritter von Markov, resumed excavations. In 1898, Bendorf founded the Austrian Archaeological Institute, which plays a leading role in Ephesus today. Finds from the site are exhibited notably in the Ephesus Museum in Vienna, the Ephesus Archaeological Museum in Selkirk, and in the British Museum. In October 2016, Turkey halted the works of the archaeologists, which had been ongoing for more than 100 years, due to tensions between Austria and Turkey. In May 2018, Turkey allowed Austrian archaeologists to resume their excavations. Notable people who lived in Ephesus are Heraclitus, 535 to 475 BC, a pre-Socratic philosopher. Hipponax, 6th century BC poet. Zeuxis, 5th century BC painter. Parrhasius, 5th century BC painter. Herostratus, died in 356 BC. He was a criminal. Zenodotus, 280 BC, a grammarian and literary critic, first librarian of the Library of Alexandria. Agasius, 2nd century BC, Greek sculptor. Menander, early 2nd century BC historian. Artemidorus Ephesius, circa 100 BC, geographer. Tiberius Julius Celsus Polymaeanus, 45 to before 120, founder of the Celsus Library. Publius Hordionius Lollianus, 1st century sophist. Rufus, 1st century physician. Polycratz of Ephesus, 130 to 197, a bishop. Cyrannus of Ephesus, 1st and 2nd century physician. Artemidorus, 2nd century AD, diviner and author. Xenophon, 2nd and 3rd century novelist. Maximus, 4th century Neoplatonic philosopher. Sosipatra, 4th century Neoplatonic philosopher. And Manuel Files, 1275 to 1345, a Byzantine poet. This is the ancient city of Ephesus. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. Remember, if you like these videos, please click on the subscribe button below and the bell for more. God's blessings be upon us all.